You don't need to be very athletic to download the Tim Kawakami podcast, but it might help. He's nice enough to join us here on Damon and Ratto to go over what is one of the more interesting stories we've ever sort of seen develop here when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers and a few other things, since we got a few other things officially starting to come up in sports. Tim, thank you for joining me. And Ray, it's always great to have you on here. I don't know how Ray feels about it. You probably know.
Hey, who cares how Ray feels about it?
That's what I've been saying.
That's the point. Yeah, I mean, good to be on. I'm sure Ratto's just kind of shaking his head right now, but that's all good. I've experienced this, but good to be on with you guys as always.
Get on with it.
There we go. That's our guy.
Ratto, I know it seems too cheery for Ray. It might be somebody else.
Your entire career, Tim, covering the 49ers. Have you ever seen a season start quite like this one?
No. I mean, just from the moment that they brought Jimmy Garoppolo back, whatever it was, late August, right before the final cut, those few weeks that I've gone through until the moment that Trey Lance got hurt, just Sunday, was some of the most bizarre stuff. I mean, even before that, right? Jimmy Garoppolo throwing side sessions on the field while the team is in training camp, and everyone knowing that he intended to be gone. The 49ers intended him to be gone. That was weird. And then he comes back, and that was weird. And Trey Lance, goes up and down in week one, and they lose, and that was weird. And then now that's the point I'm making. It's like all of a sudden, any other team you lose a starting quarterback, it's weird, and everything is pressurized. And on the 49ers, it's a terrible injury. They're worse for Trey Lance being injured. The backup now plays, and things are calmer, And I guess some people are mad that I said that. People get mad about everything these days. I'm not saying it's a judgment of anybody's talent. It's just things are calmer with the 49ers now because there's not two quarterbacks. There's one. It's Jimmy Garoppolo. Might be worse than Trey Lance. Might be better. Probably better right now. Certainly. It's the reality. Trey Lance is hurt, but it's just not the same thing because it was an incredibly bizarre story for 6 months now of 49ers trying to figure this out, and now reality's handed it to them. It's now Jimmy Garoppolo's, he's the quarterback for as long as he's healthy. He's had some trouble staying healthy in the past for as long as his.
Are you ready for Brock Purdy time? Are you ready? Are you ready for Brock Purdy time?
I think Kyle Shanahan's kind of tempted by that. Like, he's been hinting about this for several weeks. I don't see it myself. Maybe give him some time, but I think there's some temptation there. Not right now, but they might want to see what Brock Purdy can do at some point this season. I'm not ruling that part out. I don't know. I think you could probably get a bigger quarterback with a stronger arm, but Kyle Shanahan seems to be very intrigued by Brock Purdy.
So, is Kyle Shanahan the luckiest coach in America, the unluckiest coach in America, or just the guy who bounces from accident to accident with a plan that's basically in shards?
Yeah, I'd say maybe more the last one. I don't know. I mean, maybe they go on a run. They certainly have gone on runs with Jimmy Garoppolo in the past. I think they made the decision that they got to be better at quarterback, so this is not the quarterback that they had planned for. Don't know that Trey Lance was going to get there this season either. I mean, I think that was fairly large evidence that he might not get there. He was going to take him a little bit longer than that, and that would have put a lot of stress on the entire organization as they were trying to decide whether Lance was going to get there this season. I just think they made decisions based on each new set of, clues and evidence, and some of it is, led down the wrong path. Some of it, they tried, they kept, they weren't going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, right? They got here, there was going to be Kirk Cousins. I keep going back to that. But that is a guiding thing to this. They came to this team, Shanahan and John Lynch, in 2017, that they were going to eventually end up with Kirk Cousins. Then Garoppolo dropped in their laps when Belichick calls them in October 2017. And I just kind of started this whole kind of like, well, what's the best move now? Okay, Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay, Tom Brady now wants to play for us. What's the best move? Well, we'll keep Jimmy Garoppolo. But wait a minute. Well, maybe we'll try to trade for Aaron Rodgers. It's just each thing, you understand the thought process. I don't think any of it's been wholly wrong. It's just kind of led them down this wild road when I think, in the back of his mind, or maybe not even in the back of his mind, Kyle Shanahan, you know what, if I just had freaking signed Kirk Cousins and not gone through any of this, it would have been a whole lot calmer. It would have been a whole lot less stress. Maybe he's not the greatest quarterback in the world. I think Kyle thinks he's way up there. So as a lot of this is in these little torques and these little tweaks and these little bit of fractional decisions, and they got to where they got to. And it almost always leads them to Jimmy Garoppolo for some bizarre reason. No matter what, they can't leave each other.
It all comes back to Jimmy.
Jimmy Garoppolo just ends up as a 49ers quarterback. He's just like one of those constants. They can't get away from it, and that's what we're going to have this season.
So is he a brilliant improviser or a bad planner?
Kyle Shanahan? Well, the plan, you can't say like getting your quarterback, senior quarterback injured on the field that was the plan. It was. Oh no,
I'm going back to 17. I'm talking about all of it.
I think Kirk Cousins was an interesting idea, and then when Jimmy Garoppolo falls in your lap, you do it, right? I understand that, and you deviate the plan when that was there. And he got hurt the next season, 18, but then he was really good at 19. And we can all pick at his Super Bowl. We can all pick at the playoffs when Kyle decided to just run the ball and not throw it all, and what that told us about how he feels Garoppolo might perform in the biggest moments. It's all fair, but he did get to the Super Bowl. They did get to the NFC Championship last season. I think it's plans and then little decisions within the plan. So the plan was last year was, okay, let's just get rid of all this stuff. Let's just go all in on a young quarterback, and that's it. And it's right now we can go back and say whether that was Mac Jones or Trey Lance, because I think there's a large amount of evidence that Kyle originally wanted Mac Jones. He kind of, I'm not going to say talked into, but he was persuaded. He decided himself after, possibly Adam Peters and John Lynch, helped convince him otherwise. You go with a bigger talent, maybe it's going to take longer. Mac Jones probably was, you could just plop right in there and you probably know what you're going to get. Trey Lance, you're going to have to wait and see, and we're seeing that, the evidence of it. We saw it this training camp. We saw it in the game plus a quarter that he played. Just hadn't had the same amount of experience. Mac Jones had a full year going up against SEC competition. Had for 3 years, Nick Saban coaching. It's a little different than the Trey Lance had.
Tim Kawakami
plan. They just had to change it, right? They just have to change it according to the way life goes, and it sure has changed a lot because life has changed a lot since 49ers.
Again, it changes, yet nothing changes, and that's what's weird about the whole thing. Tim Kawakami on Damon and Ratto here on 95.7 The Game. And, you mentioned Kirk Cousins. Hey, it's a good thing he's not the quarterback because the next two games are in prime time, and Kirk Cousins doesn't like playing anything past his bedtime. So it's good, I guess, that we're back to Jimmy. Do you think that the 49ers' chances of winning in Denver have increased because of Jimmy Garoppolo, or because we're learning that Nathaniel Hackett might be the wrong guy for the job in Denver?
Yeah, Hackett is amazing. I mean, you watch it, you go, have you never played a video game in your life? I mean, you're an NFL coach and you've never done time management before. Everybody can tell you how to do this. I do think the chances of 49ers winning are better because of Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's a great quarterback. Road games are tough. A young quarterback on the road is always interesting. I think Denver is probably better than they've played, and we'll see how Hackett can screw them up even more. But we know Russell Wilson is always tough on the 49ers. But I think Garoppolo would give him, right this moment, the veteran-savvy Jimmy Garoppolo has a baseline that's higher than what we saw from Lance, at least right now. So I think they have a better shot at it. I don't know that they're going to win her, but I think I would have marked it down as a probable loss with Trey Lance, not as a knock on Lance, just as him as a young quarterback going on the road in a primetime environment. It's just different than anything he experienced at North Dakota State. We'll see what happens. If he screws that one up, then he might not last too much longer because he's done some brutal stuff. People rip on Shanahan for some of his game management. It hasn't been perfect, but I've understood it. Like, he always tries to, that's the thing, like, Shanahan always tries to leave himself options. And sometimes he backs himself in a corner because he tries to go, okay, if this doesn't work, I want this. That doesn't work, I want to do this. And sometimes it just doesn't work. Hackett, leaves himself, one option. Let's kick the 64-yard field goal in a stadium that's never had longer than a 55-yard field goal. Let's do it at night, and let's do it. It's perfect. It's just, those are the things, I think, if you're evaluating Shanahan, at least he doesn't do stuff like that. That stuff like that does not happen with the 49ers. Of course, I say that, and they're going to go ahead and do that Sunday probably. But Nathaniel Hackett's a good control factor for when you start thinking about what would happen if the 49ers ever thought about moving on from Kyle Shanahan. You might end up with Nathaniel Hackett, and I don't think you want to go there.
Have you ever seen somebody as persistently bad at basic time management as him? And I realize he's only had 2 games.
Yeah, short,
but I
small
can't.
sample size there.
Yeah, but let's take the small sample size and extrapolate it out. Has anybody ever been this consistently bad, where he's been confronted with essentially 8 different decisions and has been dead wrong on 7 of them, not because he was unlucky, but because they were bad ideas to begin with?
I sure can't remember an NFL coach starting his career like this, I'll put it that way, where it isn't just question. Like, a lot of times it's like, oh, of course, let's do this. And you're thinking, you know what? It worked out badly, but there were reasons. I go back to Shanahan, and I think Harbaugh had a few. And, there's Andy Reid certainly has had some struggling issues on the way he's run 2 minutes. But there were reasons they did that. Didn't feel like the right reasons. But you could argue with the point. With Hackett, I've never seen a coach start a couple games, and you're like, everybody's screaming at their TV, like, as it's happening. What are you doing? This is crazy. You have 3 timeouts. You got 51 seconds left. Stop it and give yourself another. Like, I can't remember one like that. Maybe a college coach or something. I can't remember an NFL coach who's theoretically gone through NFL games. You should be at a pretty high level. He never was an offensive coordinator, so maybe that's the problem. He's never called plays in time, and maybe he froze a little bit. It feels like he's freezing a lot. I can't remember a coach, his first 2 games, certainly the first one, which is the national TV game, where it was that obvious. I don't know where you go from that. Do you all of a sudden get better? And when you're terrible at it in your first 2 games, I guess it's possible. But there's been non-coordinators who've been made head coaches. Andy Reid's one of them, who have done very well. Clearly, Andy Reid's a Hall of Fame coach.
Well, remember, he was defined by clock management issues in Philadelphia. So,
exactly.
It does take time. It does.
It takes time. And, you want a coordinator. I think if you're going to hire a head coach, please hire someone who's been a head coach or a coordinator, usually. 99% of the time, that's the way to go.
Tim, more likely to happen, and this is an unfair question because we don't know how the season ends, and how the season ends probably goes a long way to how you answer this question, but you're a big boy, so I'm going to ask anyways. More likely to happen this offseason, Jimmy Garoppolo enters another contract with the 49ers, or they're drafting a quarterback in the upcoming draft?
They don't have a first-round pick. You know why? Because they traded 3 for Trey Lance. So I would say the more likely is that Jimmy Garoppolo is back. Again, let's see if he gets through it healthy. Let's see if he plays well. I think he's going to play. We know how Jimmy's going to play it. If he's healthy, he's going to play pretty good. They're going to win some games, and we'll see what happens in the big game. But even if they win a playoff game and look bad in the second one and people are mad, I think the much stronger likelihood is that Jimmy Garoppolo comes back to the 49ers. It's going to cost money. I don't know. They might go on the veteran route. I keep saying Kirk Cousins. He's under contract to the Vikings for another year, but they might be willing to get out of that one. I think it's just more likely they're going to play a veteran quarterback and pair that quarterback with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. Then they're going to draft another quarterback. They've expended all their drafts, like all their first round draft choices. So then you're talking about a second round pick for a quarterback after you've used 3 number 1s to get your young quarterback. I think Purdy is going to be the other quarterback, on the backside, and it's going to be a veteran, and Trey Lance, we'll see where he is physically and mentally, and Brock Purdy. I think those are your 3 quarterbacks next season.
There's been a lot of nitwit speculation about how the locker room feels about the way this has played out. Is there any indication that they've done anything other than just roll with the punches and just tell us who's taking the snaps on Sunday?
Yeah, I think roll with the punches is actually a pretty good way to describe it. But you know how locker rooms react. They react to wins and losses. I'll just put it this way. I have not reported the stuff that, there's locker room, some players who think Jimmy's better, and I just know there's been no pushback on that. None. The players are not saying, geez, that's crazy. They support the guy that's the starter. They like Trey Lance. I don't want to say anything other than that. They were quite, hit hard emotionally by seeing him on the ground. We saw him run over. But they also are not saying, God, it's crazy that people would think that Jimmy Garoppolo is better right now. They're not doing that. Again, that's kind of trying to prove a negative, but I've been around teams when these reports have come out, and if it's wrong, they go, what are you talking about? That's stupid. No way. You would see a leader step forward and say, this is not the case at all, and have not happened. I just believe, again, locker room's 53 guys, more than 50 guys, 53 if you count injured reserve and practice squad. So there's all kinds of different thoughts. Like sometimes you go, the locker room thinks, no, there's one or two or three guys, maybe. But I do think some of the big-time guys, probably some of the big-time guys on offense, were just kind of like shrugging their shoulders. Like maybe Trey's good, but maybe Jimmy's better, so we'll see. And a win or a loss was going to heavily influence that. That's the NFL. They only get 17 of them now. Every week you feel differently because it's determined by what happened in the game. What happened in Trey's first game, not his fault. It was in a monsoon, but they lost. He did not look great. I think that was only going to build, not that players in there were campaigning for Jimmy, not that there were meetings about it, but just the fact that Shanahan and Lynch felt they needed to meet with 15 players when they made a decision to keep Garoppolo, to insist to them, like, hey, let's support Trey with this, tells you that they had some questions about it. They don't normally do stuff like that. They don't normally need to get a pulse of the locker room. They know it. This one was a little less, sure. And just, I think if they had gone 3-1, nobody would have, life was fine. They go 1-3, I think there would have been a lot of building sentiment that they have the wrong quarterback starting. Not that they hate Trey, it's just that they want the quarterback who can perform better and performs better in practice, and they know. Again, that doesn't mean there was going to be revolt. It doesn't mean that there were, instigation, nothing like that. I'm just saying I don't think the reports, however you wanted to cage them, however many players you thought it was, whatever you thought the true level of this, I think there were some players in there who were like, okay, let's see what Trey's got. And we know what Jimmy is. And all of a sudden, things are a little more lively when Jimmy's running. But just those sort of things were out there. I just don't think it's deniable. And it would have built or not built, depending on the record. Now, we won't know. But there was something to this. I'll put it there. There was something to it. Maybe not a huge part of it, but more than the 49ers have had in the Shanahan era. This was the biggest kind of question in a locker room, around players, that there's ever been in the Shanahan era. And I think he knew that.
Tim, let's wrap up with this because we want to make sure you can get to happy hour tonight. Do you have a gut feeling about the Warriors season that we're about to see? And what in your mind is the biggest hurdle they need to overcome to be a great NBA team once again?
I think they need to see if Kuminga, Wiseman, and Moody can play serious minutes. And I mean serious minutes, not just when Clay, Steph, and Draymond are resting, or not just in the back end of the game. Like, play some serious rotational minutes. Don't know that's going to happen. And, we know Steve Kerr plays a lot of guys, but he also gets, a little tight with rookies or young players. Not rookies anymore, but they're young players. And maybe, knocks them down the rotation a little bit. But can they count on them? Are they real players on a good team? Some of them will be, some of them won't be. But that's how this team kind of gets a second booster to try to go after a repeat championship. If those guys aren't good, don't know that they're going to do it. I mean, it was a remarkable season last year. We know what Steph did, and we know that Draymond played great in the playoffs. We know that Clay, came back and probably will be better. We know what Wiggins did, but I just think the depth of that team was in question. Then they lost a lot of it. GP2 and Otto Porter. These guys have to fill that, and that's the question for me. I think looking at Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a big, big measuring stick. If he's playing meaningful minutes into the playoffs, I think they're going to be really good and possibly can win another championship.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and I'm expecting to bump into you Sunday over at Warriors Media Day.
No, I'm going to be in Denver. Sorry.
Oh, that's right. The man follows the big story. There he is. Thank you, then, Tim.
It's going to be my first Miss Warriors Media Day in 22 years, I think. It's kind of ridiculous.
Then I'll miss you on Sunday. How about that? Just that simple.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
You got to do it.
There he is.